Thanks for coming back and taking a look at my media, my collection, my output here. Nothing succeeds like success, but nothing reveals failure like watching a guy do a video with no video. Again, I like to do audio, but I didn't. I thought I had a screen, a still, in my previous videos. Obviously, I don't. I thought I did. I did not. Um, I'm learning as I go along. So as long as you're willing to bear with me and indulge me in my errors, then please keep coming keep coming back. I would love to hear exactly where I'm going wrong. And seeing other people's videos is showing me that just as well. So I'll look around some more. A lot of the stuff I watch is a bit out of my league as of right now. Who knows how soon I can turn the corner. I'm just glad I can have a still shot in a video here now. In any case, a good old reaction review. I guess I've got the bug. I like watching old television, old movies, some new television and new movies. I like catching things I didn't see before. Not that long ago, I decided I needed to save space on my video shelf. I had a lot of individual discs with a handful of episodes of the Twilight Zone on each. I certainly didn't have the whole series, but oh God, I don't know how long ago these were released. The discs I bought, they were all out of order. It was a collection of, volume 1, volume 2, more episodes of the Twilight Zone. I saw up to volume 34 and some of these more of discs as well, but probably to get the whole series would have been 50, maybe 60 discs. I don't know if they included any of the hour-long episodes. They must have, some of them anyways. Regardless, I needed the space. I had probably 30 actual discs. And again, I had some gaps. But that's a lot of space on a shelf. I'm a guy who likes physical media. It looks nice in some cases. In some cases, it looks like a damn mess. But I do like the look of the things on my shelf. And the Twilight Zone's kind of a big deal, landmark thing. I remember watching it when I was younger, and something about black and white TV that didn't scare me away. I ended up being a fan of Doctor Who in my teen years, and having got a lot of that underneath my belt, going back to the black and white era. I had a lot of enthusiasm for the show, and so forget it. If it's black and white, I'm going to get into it. It's not going to dissuade me. I had friends who didn't like watching black and white television and movies, but it didn't bother me. Damn it, I was a fan. I had to watch it. Well, I had also grown up coming home from school and watching the Dick Van Dyke Show and I Love Lucy. And younger than that, I watched the Twilight Zone. The stories captivated me. Obviously, I'm dropping the bucket as far as the audience is concerned. A lot of people love this series, and things stick with you. I never watched all of them. I'm finding that out because I bought the entire series in this condensed collection of many discs in a 2-inch thick case, which will probably fall apart on me. In any case, I've been able to go back and rewatch these and watch some for the first time in order of, or at least whatever the order is they've got them in the discs. And it looks like they've got season by season. I presume this was broadcast release date. And it doesn't surprise me that some of my favorites, I guess favorites, some that stand out in my mind and in the cultural world, cultural consciousness, some that are remembered more than others, are in season 1. Let me grab that. Let me grab this just for a second. Physically go get this massive chunk of stuff, the stuff that's saving space on my shelf. Let's take a look at season 1. Well, Mr. Denton and Doomsday. Time Enough to Last. Okay, that's a big one. The Four of Us Are Dying rings a bell. Third from the Sun rings a bell. I Shot an Arrow in the Air. I remember that. The Hitchhiker, just the name alone. The Fever. I loved The Fever. It was so creepy. A lot of these were so creepy. Some of them were so odd and interesting and thought-provoking. One that I think was in season 2 had Art Carney, and it was on video. It was shot on video, not on film. And it was the sweetest Christmas story. I think I had certainly didn't expect it from the Twilight Zone. And they would deliver these sweet, endearing stories. And whatever it was called, the Night of the Meek with Art Carney was just wonderful. In any case, there's a lot of these on season 1, like I mentioned. Passage for Trumpet, Stop at Willoughby, and of course, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. That came back to me a few years ago watching the new series of Doctor Who. If anyone's a fan, the 10th Doctor, David Tennant, in his 4th season, he had, well, is it his 4th season or the 4th season? In any case, they did a story with him, his character, called Midnight. Midnight, fairly quickly, made me think of the Twilight Zone for a couple of different reasons. And it was one set, pretty much one set, entirely in what is essentially an airplane. It's actually a shuttle. It's in the future, so it's more like a bus, but it looks a lot like an airplane. And that, of course, made me think of, what is it, Terror at 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet, with William Shatner. But it was very confined, claustrophobic. That was the Twilight Zone element of it. It also reminded me, after seeing the whole episode, I think I referred to some other friends of mine. I referred them to, you remember The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street? Yeah, it's like that. It really was. The characters are all normal people. And just enough things go wrong. They don't see anything. There's nothing they see. And their attitude, and they represent society as a whole, it devolves. It instantly reverts to total fear, panic, knee-jerk reactions, paranoia. Who's really the problem? And desperately seeking out where the problem is so they can solve it or get rid of it or eliminate it. That's The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Funny that I'm thinking about that right now. I've even said that to a couple of friends. I've said occasionally, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. And I do not remove myself from the equation. That's the problem. That's the lesson. We are all on Maple Street. We are all of us the neighbors. We are all of us subject to these fears. It's a cautionary tale, and I hate panic. I hate it. We all can be afflicted with it. We can all see the effects of it when other people have it as well. I try to eliminate that part of my makeup when I notice it. Do I always notice it? No. But I try to operate without it, because the last thing we need is panic. How many times you made a really good decision in the middle of a panic? You can make some basic decisions. You can make some really good, simple decisions. Fight or flight. But can you reasonably pick out a complicated solution in a complicated problem? Probably not. Probably not. It's very depressing. Sometimes sometimes the Twilight Zone was very frightening. Sometimes it was depressing. Sometimes it was very uplifting. The Monsters Are Doing Maple Street is very sobering. So too is the time we live in right now. Very sobering. Let me take a look. Here's that mist, that strange special effects mist that they've got. I do love this show. It is very simple, very, very simple artwork and all of that to open up this show. And the guy who wrote it, at least I think he wrote this episode, or wrote enough of them, he's speaking. Mr. Serling. The guy who everyone had this impersonation of Rod Serling, who was very clipped, but still sometimes had a sibilant sound to his voice, I think. How lovely. Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. I don't know why it made me think of The Music Man. It made me think of The Music Man. This walkway. It also makes me think of the neighborhood in John Carpenter's Halloween. Almost all the sci-fi elements, all the Twilight Zone had these sci-fi elements. Sometimes they're very subtle, though. And you put them in today, now. I totally believe this is 60 years old. This thing came on the scene. Gosh. It was the 22nd episode of the first season. When the hell was it? When the hell was it? I mean, obviously, I'm looking this stuff up while I'm watching, which is sometimes very annoying. Friends of mine and family keep. Don't pause it, pal. Don't pause it. We just want to watch. And maybe you can shut up. That's probably the reason why I'm doing this. So I can confidently go through my, check this out. What's going on? Without annoying friends of mine, without annoying my family. So if it's March the 4th of 1960, the place I'm looking right now gets at a 9 out of 10. And, that might be too high, but it's as good as any television series episode. And the message, of course, is I think what a lot of people are giving it the 9 out of 10 for. I hope it's not the sort of thing where people think of it and say, but not me. It's all of you, but not me. We're watching people do handyman work outside on their lawn. I suspect these days if they'd shoot in a garage too, as well as on the front lawn. But if you have it in the yard, you get this more communal neighborhood 50s atmosphere. There's this guy. I think it's the guy who ends up, he's this round-faced, overweight guy. He's been on the Twilight Zone at least once before. I think he was in the episode with Shakespeare. I actually just watched Rio Bravo the other day where Claude Akins was in that as well, and he's the guy locked up in jail. The problem. That's right. He was in Mr. Burns. He was Sheriff Lobo in BJ, and that's where I knew him from. Yeah, he had a lot of credits. He did a lot of work, a lot of television. A lot of television. He was a worker. I never saw Gunsmoke, but you know, a lot of Gunsmoke as well. He had this voice. It was just so you get the idea of something crazy, something ridiculous. Something weird happened up in the sky, and some kid talks about his comic books and plants the seed of paranoia. What's something that comes up through the whole thing every so often? Somebody in the neighborhood says, yeah, but this is all crazy. We're getting carried away here. That's the scary part. Somebody recognizing it. I'm going to have to do a look at that episode of Doctor Who as well. This kid's supposed to be a kid. The character is a kid, but he's almost certainly 18 or how old he really is. Well, actually, I think this kid was 15. Now they get the pan of the whole neighborhood. They're all looking, they're all worried, even though they just hear this, you know, silly comic book story, horror story. Yeah, they laugh off the idea that Claude Aiken says, you know, we're just going to have to find out who's really human, right? Because he's just kind of joking about it. They're all concerned early on. Early on, they're all concerned. Just things are weird and they can't explain them, and we're a third of the way through here. I remember watching this and thinking, well, it's just the car starting. How it's just lights going on and off. It seems so dumb. How would anybody fall for this? Well, when you're in the middle of a panic, I suppose it could take anything. But why? It doesn't make sense. How could aliens make cars stop and start? Because it needs you need to crank it. You need to turn the key over. Even as a kid, I kind of knew that. I don't believe it. It's dumb. Then, of course, 5 minutes later, I'm on the edge of my seat. I just saw an episode from season three's Twilight Zone that had essentially the same thing, a very similar story with fewer people and one guy with a bomb shelter. Jack Warden, was it Jack Warden? Who's ever the Chico and the Man and the guy who plays Uncle Joe in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. His voice rings out like a shot. That is something that bothered me about the monsters are doing on Maple Street. Just how would any of this stuff happen? And part of it is you're not supposed to see the weird aliens that look just like us that are trying to invade. You got to save that for the end. I suppose that's a spoiler warning for anybody. But you got to keep it ambiguous. Weird, strange. How could there be a problem here? Because the contrast is everyone there is going nuts. It's all daylight. It's all still daylight. He's pointing out, yeah, right now we are now getting it into our head, speaking to the rest of the crowd. We're on a monster hunt. This is what we're doing, and this is why we're talking to you right now. So he's explaining how crazy it is. And the guy who's getting stared at really feels how crazy it is. You people are nuts. It's very frustrating just watching this, thinking about what's going on. In fact, I bought this collection well in the middle of the lockdown. I was saying this back then. You'd see people on social media or in neighborhoods, or when you got to the store, people would look at you and look at you and look at that guy. And I saw a guy when I was at a store, and it was dry. I had some dust and I had sneezed, but I put my head pretty much entirely, my entire face inside my jacket and sneezed, made sure I was very careful. Not because I was worried anybody was going to get anything, but I suppose like everybody else, want everyone to see that I was trying to be careful of that. But this guy was walking by, and he had this wide berth, and he had this wide-eyed look at me like I had three heads, like these guys are in the Monsters Are Doing Maple Street. And he walked around, and then he gets to an aisle and looks over his shoulder and rushes away. I had to laugh. It's one of the things that made me think of this. Someone disagrees with you, and you're not just wrong, you're adding to the problem. You are the problem. You're the new problem. You're not just wrong, you're evil. That's this story. Saving yourself by finding the culprit and blaming somebody else, but you're just flailing around, pointing your finger at anything. You're desperate. You will point at anything. You will even probably tell yourself lies and believe them for comfort, even though there is no comfort. There is only the panic. The mob is always hungry, and the mob has a voracious appetite, and it is never sated. Everyone's sitting outside, watching each other diligently. He ain't drinking a beer. Charlie, he ain't drinking a beer. That almost certainly is a Coke. Or a Pepsi. I like to believe it's a Coke. Yeah, the guy, Jack Weston, is this guy playing Charlie, the neighbor Charlie Farnsworth. This kind of a round-faced, cherub-cheeked, he's an overweight guy. He's in at least one other episode of Twilight Zone. You gotta be kidding me. That guy, Charlie, is in Wait Until Dark. He was in Dirty Dancing. He was in Ishtar as well. hollering across the yards and across the street, pointing out who's under the watchful eye of suspicion. So that's what's odd, is that he seems to be drinking this cola, but he kind of acts like he's got a couple of beers in him. Just the way he's enunciating things, not sloppy, not slurring. Just the way he's lurching. It's not drunken. In fact, that's funny. It's almost certainly a cola, but he's drunk on the attention, getting a little bit of authority, and the paranoia. Yeah, no need getting so upset, Steve. We're just curious, and we don't want there to be an alien that looks like one of us to take over the neighborhood. It's the sort of thing that I mean, obviously it's a silly, the specifics are silly. A landing of a spaceship just around the corner, just past the hill, or they're going to invade us. UFOs in that. That's the far-fetched part. The part that's not far-fetched is the thick tension, is the suspicions, that the stuff that sounds crazy that we will believe. What is it you do? Yeah, what is it you do at night, huh? I don't know if we have the same attitude 60 years later, talking across the fence next door and all of that. Maybe that was always an artifact of television for storytelling. Maybe neighborhoods are every bit as similar to the late 50s and 1960s, well, the same as they always were, maybe. Claude Akins has been saying this ever steadily. He's not the only one, but he's clearly the lead in this ensemble. Every so often, he keeps saying, "Look, we're going crazy. We're looking under the covers for little green men." And gradually, the more he says it, the more his voice raises in pitch and volume, more intensity. They all look. They all turn. These shots of turning heads, and now we have footsteps. We only see the feet. And fairly quickly, we see, with these footsteps going up the leg, to the hammer of the neighbor. So it's the neighbor who went to the next around the street, next street or something like that, to go and see what's going on over there. Did they see anything? Are their lights going out? I think the character's Pete Van Horn is what he's called. This is where it really starts. Fella gets a gun. It's a shotgun. See, we know now, the audience knows there's the hammer. It's almost certainly not the guy. Now they shot him. Yeah. We get to see ahead of time, it ain't a monster, unless of course it's a monster wearing his clothes, but we're not thinking that way. The mob now sees the thing that fell, and now they go with lanterns and they see it's their neighbor. They've just killed a man. They've killed not just a man, they've killed one of their own. Now it's proven none of them are safe. None of them are safe from themselves. And the guy panics even more. It's a different kind of panic. The guy who shot him, the guy who shot Pete Van Horn, Charlie, he's desperate. because now everyone has seen that he has done something horrible, and that he was wrong. Maybe there still is something out there. And it gets even worse. Lights are on, lights are off, lights are on. Your house, but your house. But why are they going on in your house? No, they're not just going on in your house. What about his house? It's not my house, it's Charlie's house. What about your house, Steve? What about your house, Don? You want to pause. You want them all to pause. Because you don't want this happening in your own backyard, your own neighborhood, your own backyard fence, your own house. Now they all retreat. Well, they don't all retreat. Charlie retreats, and all of them go to get rocks from his yard and throw them at him. Doesn't need to be that. We are capable of great irrational nonsense and foolhardy behavior, corrupt, disruptive, destructive behavior. It's now gone to hell. It is now gone to hell. Shrieking, yelling, shooting, throwing rocks, throwing bricks, breaking windows, breaking lights, panic in the streets, running. And it's only about a dozen people, maybe a dozen to 18 people. And of course, it'll spread to the next neighborhood, into the next neighborhood, into the next neighborhood. Now there's this big pullback. Certainly a projection screen, it's got to be. And there's the aliens that look like us. That's the one part that got a little too much. I didn't realize this was the case. I thought the allegory was almost always left just sitting for us to observe. There's a lot of ham-fisted, this is the reason this episode works this way. These human creatures will destroy themselves with their fear and paranoia. Well, yeah, it's sort of clunky. That's the clunky part. That's the clunkiness in the ham-fisted part of the writing. And it's all over the place. Yeah, prejudices can kill and suspicion can destroy. I think even more so than the prejudice in this episode anyway, it's the suspicion of anything out of the ordinary, anything that you don't think is normal. And it doesn't even need to be a real difference. You could just perceive it to be something out of line. You can be wrong. You can be wrong and make really bad decisions. I will say the one interesting thing about this collection of episodes of the Twilight Zone, I had no idea that there were these little teasers at the end. Now Rod Serling on next week's episode. Fantastic. And then there's even something more interesting. They'll have little teasers for other television shows like Steve McQueen's, was it Wanted Dead or Alive? Or is that it might be, I can't remember if that's the name of the show or that's the name of the show that Quentin Tarantino calls a similar show in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And then occasionally we have Serling stumping for a cigarette company, and he even smokes a cigarette. I mean, I think he smokes a lot on the show, but he'll smoke the brand that he's stumping for. To see an ad that I'm not aware of that's in so many of these Twilight Zone episodes. Certainly for syndication, that'd be almost certainly the first thing they cut, and coming up next week and all of that. It's a nice little artifact of 1960s television in the collection here. That sort of stuff fascinates me. A little window. It's time travel for me. There's no Wayback Machine, but this Wayback Machine. Thanks for tuning in, making it this long. I appreciate it. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, the like button, you can click that. I'd appreciate that you do. Maybe subscribe or make a comment, respond to somebody else's comment, or maybe you have a recommendation of your own to give to me. Not that I've necessarily clicked with you this early, but maybe you and I have some similar tastes or completely different tastes, and it'd be good to broaden my horizons. Let me know what you think. And